Good evening, and welcome back to After Midnight. Tonight's video is going to be a little different from what I usually post. I'm stepping away from the usual format to cover a real murder case. Don't worry though, this isn't a permanent change. I'll still be uploading the kind of content you normally expect from this channel. I just wanted to explore another kind of darkness for this one. So with that said, let's get into it. Tonight's case takes us to Breckenridge, Colorado. Breckenridge is known as a beautiful ski town tucked away in the Rocky Mountains. Surrounded by towering peaks and scenic views, it draws visitors from all over the world. People come for the skiing, the outdoor adventure, and the small-town charm. But in the early 1980s, beneath that postcard-perfect setting, something terrifying happened. On January 6, 1982, two women vanished just hours apart. At first, no one realized the two disappearances were connected. In fact, it would take investigators nearly 6 months to understand that both women had likely crossed paths with the same killer. The victims were Annette Schnee and Bobbie Jo Oberholtzer. Both women were known to hitchhike around Breckenridge and nearby towns, which was much more common at the time than it would be today. In the early 1980s, hitchhiking was often seen as normal, especially in mountain communities where people frequently relied on each other for rides. Annette Schnee, 21 years old, was last seen around 4:45 p.m. after leaving her job at a hotel. She stopped at a drugstore in Breckenridge to pick up medication, and after that, she disappeared. Just a few hours later, around 7:50 p.m., Bobbie Jo Oberholtzer, 29, also vanished. Earlier that evening, Bobbie Jo had been at a local pub with friends. Before heading home, she called her husband, Jeff, to let him know she'd be back soon. She even told him he didn't need to come get her because she was sure she'd be able to find a ride. Jeff expected her home not long after that call. At some point, he fell asleep while waiting. But when he woke up around midnight, Bobbie Jo still wasn't home. At first, he may have thought she had simply lost track of time. But as the hours passed, that explanation stopped making sense. He went out looking for her and tried to report her missing, only to be told by Breckenridge police that he would need to wait 24 hours before they could really do anything. Not long after, Jeff received a call from a local rancher who said he had found Bobbie Jo's driver's license on his property. Jeff rushed out to the location, and on the way there, he spotted Bobbie Jo's backpack lying on the side of the road. Nearby, he also found her right glove and a tissue. Both had small amounts of blood on them. The next day, friends of Bobbie Jo organized a search party and went out looking for her on skis. At around 3 p.m., her body was discovered off Highway 9 near a snowbank. She had been shot twice. Investigators believed she had tried to run from her attacker before she was killed. According to Colorado Bureau of Investigation agent Jim Hartke, Bobbie Jo was fully clothed, and there was no confirmed evidence that she had been sexually assaulted. A plastic zip tie was found around one of her wrists. Near the scene, investigators recovered a keychain Jeff had made for her, a heavy brass hook designed for self-defense. Because Bobbie Jo often hitchhiked, Jeff had wanted her to have something she could use if she ever found herself in danger. There was also something else found near the body, a bright orange booty sock. It didn't belong to Bobbie Jo. At the time, there was no obvious reason to connect it to the murder, but investigators collected it anyway, hoping it might eventually mean something. 2 days later, on January 8th, one of Annette Schnee's co-workers contacted the Frisco Police Department after Annette failed to show up for work for the second straight day. Police were able to trace some of Annette's movements on the day she vanished, but only up until the point she left the drugstore. After that, the trail went cold. One witness reported seeing Annette arguing with a dark-haired woman inside the drugstore before she disappeared. That woman was never identified. Investigators also asked Jeff Oberholtzer whether he knew Annette. At first he said no, but after being shown a photo of her, he told police that he did recognize her. He said he had given her a ride once in the past, but claimed it happened only that one time and that he hadn't seen her again after that. When police asked Jeff for his alibi, he said he had spent that day at home with a friend. But when investigators tried to confirm that story, Jeff couldn't produce the witness. Years later, police finally tracked that friend down. But the timeline he gave didn't line up with Jeff's original account. That only made investigators more suspicious. Then, nearly 6 months after she vanished, there was a major development. On July 3rd, 1982, a young boy fishing in the area found Annette Schnee's body face down in a stream. She was located about 23 miles from Breckenridge, far from where she had last been seen alive. There was evidence suggesting that she had been shot in the back, likely while running downhill toward the water. No bullet was ever recovered. Hardkey suspected Annette had been sexually assaulted. Her jeans had a broken zipper, and her shoes were found on the wrong feet. But because her body had been submerged in the stream for so long, investigators couldn't confirm sexual assault through forensic evidence. They also discovered something else inside her wallet, a business card for Jeff Oberholtzer's appliance repair company. That discovery raised even more questions around Jeff. But the moment that truly changed the investigation came during Annette's autopsy. On her left foot, investigators found a single orange booty sock. Hardkey immediately remembered the matching orange sock that had been recovered near Bobbie Jo's body 6 months earlier. That was the moment investigators realized they were not looking at 2 separate disappearances. They were looking at one killer. Detectives began reconstructing what may have happened that day. Their theory was that after leaving the drugstore, Annette was picked up while hitchhiking by someone who assaulted and murdered her soon afterward. They believed she may have lost one of her socks inside the killer's vehicle during the attack. Later that same day, they believed the same man picked up Bobbie Jo. At some point, investigators think he attacked her too. But unlike Annette, Bobbie Jo fought back. They believe she may have struck him in the face with the brass keychain Jeff had made for her, then tried to escape from the vehicle. In the struggle, the sock left behind earlier by Annette may have been kicked out of the vehicle. Bobbie Jo was then shot and killed as she tried to get away. For a long time, Jeff Oberholtzer remained the main suspect. Part of that was simply because spouses are often looked at first in cases like this. But there were other reasons too. He had admitted to knowing Annette. His business card was found in her wallet. And shortly after Annette was reported missing, he went to police and claimed he had a premonition that her body would be found about 4 miles from his home on July 4th, 1982. Investigators thought that was extremely strange. As it turned out, Annette's body was found around 7 miles away from his home, and just 1 day earlier than Jeff had predicted. Jeff explained the business card by saying he handed them out to nearly everyone he met, including Annette, when he gave her that ride. Even so, police remained suspicious, but they had no physical evidence tying him to either murder. Then, in 1995, advances in testing brought new hope. The blood found on Bobbie Jo's glove and the tissue near her backpack was finally analyzed. For years, investigators had assumed the blood belonged to one of the women. It didn't. The tests showed that both blood samples belonged to the same person, a man. And more importantly, that man wasn't Jeff Oberholtzer. At that point, Jeff was no longer the primary suspect. Still, even with that DNA, investigators had no name to attach to it, and the case remained unsolved for decades. Then, nearly 40 years later, everything changed. In early 2020, Park County Detective Sergeant Wendy Killar began looking into a newer forensic method: genetic genealogy. This process allows investigators to compare crime scene DNA to profiles in public genealogy databases, using family connections to narrow down a suspect. Kalar sent the male DNA profile from the glove and tissue to United Data Connect, a genetic genealogy company in Denver. On January 9th, 2021, she got a call with a breakthrough investigators had waited decades for. The genealogy results pointed to two possible names, Alan Phillips and Bruce Phillips. Kalar moved fast. She first contacted Bruce, who had never lived in Colorado. But Bruce told her that his estranged brother, Alan, had lived near the area where the murders happened. In fact, Alan Phillips was still living nearby. Bruce was ruled out quickly. Alan, however, was suddenly back in focus. What made it even more chilling was that Alan Phillips had actually come up once before. Back in 2005, police had received an anonymous tip about him. But at that time, investigators couldn't establish any connection between Phillips and the victims, so nothing came of it. Now they looked deeper. As Kalar investigated Alan Phillips' past, she uncovered records showing he had once been arrested and charged with assault and burglary. Those records had been difficult to locate, but when she finally found them, the details were disturbing. In 1973, Phillips had confessed to picking up a female hitchhiker and attacking her with a rock, striking her several times. Somehow, the victim managed to talk him down, and he let her go. For that crime, Phillips served only 6 months in jail. To investigators, that earlier attack felt like a warning sign, one that had gone unnoticed until it was far too late. By then, Kipple was convinced Alan Phillips was responsible for the murders of Annette Schnee and Bobbie Jo Oberholtzer. But she still needed a direct DNA match. That proved harder than expected. Detectives followed Phillips for weeks, waiting for him to throw away something they could collect, anything with saliva or skin cells on it. Finally, after about 5 weeks of surveillance, they got what they needed. Phillips threw away trash from a Sonic drive-thru. Investigators recovered a napkin from the trash, tested the saliva on it, and the results came back as a match to the male blood found on Bobbie Jo's glove and the nearby tissue. It was him. Later testing would strengthen the case even more. DNA showed that Annette's DNA was on the inside of the stray orange booty sock, while Bobbie Jo's DNA was on the outside. That single piece of evidence helped confirm that the two attacks were linked. And then came one of the strangest twists in the entire case. Authorities learned that on the very same day as the murders, January 6th, 1982, Alan Phillips had to be rescued after getting stranded in a brutal blizzard. Only hours after killing and disposing of 2 victims, his truck became stuck in deep snow. The truck bed had sunk into the drift, and his headlights were pointed upward toward the sky. A plane flying overhead noticed lights flickering through the storm. Someone on the ground was signaling SOS in Morse code. The crew radioed the coordinates to the sheriff's office. A local fire chief named Dave Montoya volunteered to check it out. When he got there, he recognized the man stranded in the snow. It was Alan Phillips, someone he had once worked with in the mines. Phillips told him he'd been drinking and got stuck while trying to drive home. But Montoya also noticed that Phillips had a visible bruise and a cut on his face. Phillips claimed he got the injury while trying to free the truck from the snow. Today, investigators believe something very different. They believe that injury came from Bobbie Jo fighting for her life, striking Phillips in the face with the brass keychain Jeff had made for her. Not long after the DNA from the discarded trash confirmed the match, Phillips was arrested during a traffic stop. After nearly 4 decades, the man investigators had been searching for was finally in custody. The trial began on August 31st, 2022, in Fairplay, Colorado. By then, Alan Phillips was 71 years old. He was charged with 8 felony counts, including first-degree murder and kidnapping. His defense team tried to point suspicion back toward Jeff Oberholtzer. They argued that Jeff had motive and opportunity, and they pointed to the odd details that had surrounded him for years, including the so-called premonition. They also challenged the DNA evidence. claiming it had been mishandled or contaminated. But the jury wasn't convinced. On September 15th, 2022, after 4 hours and 45 minutes of deliberation, Alan Lee Phillips was found guilty on all 8 charges. 7 weeks later, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. But in the end, he would not serve much of that time. Less than 6 months after his conviction, Alan Phillips died at the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility. Authorities said foul play was not suspected, though autopsy results were still pending at the time. Even with the conviction, there are still questions hanging over this case. Some investigators and observers have long wondered whether Phillips may have had other victims. There's no confirmed evidence tying him to additional murders, but given his earlier 1973 attack and the fact that he remained free for so many years, many believe there may still be things no one knows. One of the most heartbreaking parts of this story is the role Bobbie Jo may have played in solving it. Her family, and Annette's, have expressed gratitude that she fought back. Without the blood left behind on the glove and tissue, Alan Phillips may never have been identified. This case is a story about brutality, but it's also a story about persistence. It took nearly 40 years, multiple investigators, new technology, and relentless determination to bring the truth to light. Annette Schnee and Bobbie Jo Oberholtzer should have had their whole lives ahead of them. They never got that chance. But after decades of silence, the man responsible was finally named, finally convicted, and finally exposed. And even though justice came painfully late, it came at a devastating cost. If you made it to the end of the video, let me know in the comments down below. Also, feel free to provide me with feedback on my videos, so I can make my content the absolute best it can be for you guys. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to After Midnight for weekly scary stories, dark mysteries, and late-night nightmares. Sleep well, and I'll see you after midnight.